Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming. We're so delighted to have Professor Raj Thakkar with us today. Professor Thakkar is an adjunct assistant professor of public service at the NYU Wagner Graduate School of Public Service. He is widely considered a national expert on charter school finance and is a social entrepreneur committed to the solvency of charter schools. In 2006, he founded the Charter School Business Management, or CSBM, a company that prevents charter schools from closing due to financial mismanagement. In recognition of CSBM's impact, Professor Thakkar was named one of 50 outstanding Asian Americans in business by the Asian American Business Development Center, one of the top entrepreneurs of 2013 by Crain's Magazine, and in 2011, the Small Business Person of the Year for the New York District by the U.S. Small Business Administration. In order to continue making a positive impact in New York City, Professor Thakkar was most recently launched a second brand, Foresight Financial Services for Good, which empowers other nonprofits with the financial knowledge and services they need to develop and maintain fiscal solvency. On behalf of the Junior Economic Club of New York City, we are so delighted to have Professor Thakkar lead this webinar today, and I invite all of our members to help me in giving him a warm welcome.
Great, thanks so much for having me. So when we were bouncing around ideas of what exactly to share, what was brought to me was talking about social enterprises and nonprofits and what it actually takes to launch one. So before we get started, I'm going to give a little bit more background and just wanted to share some notes before getting started. So please ask questions throughout our time together. I'd much rather this be a dialogue than a monologue. I'd rather not ramble, where in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'd rather you ask the question. And I'm so used to talking folks in the working world, not young adults in high school. So there's certain concepts that I may be like glancing over where you're like, what the heck is that? So just, please interrupt me, raise a hand, or if you want to designate somebody to ask questions, because I think your generation is more about typing your questions than asking. So if someone can do that, that'll be a lot smoother. And if people want to speak up, that's totally fine too. I really want this information to help you and guide you. So so just a little bit of background. A social entrepreneur, native New Yorker, born in Flushing, Queens. Entrepreneurship's in my blood. I'm an entrepreneur, obviously. My father was an entrepreneur. My grandfather, my great-grandfathers were all entrepreneurs. So it's just there, but you don't necessarily have to have it in your blood. You can learn it on your own. But it's just there. Happily married, one 11-year-old daughter who I've been teaching about the business on and off as she's interested. I care deeply about helping people. I'm an active member of Young Presidents Organization, which has hundreds of chapters around the world who are organizations that are larger than $10 million in revenues. I've completed the New York City Marathon 4 times, but I've since stopped doing that, now into yoga and meditation. Undergrad, went to Hofstra University, studied bioengineering, and of all things, I'm in, handling school and nonprofit finance now. So pivoting in your career is certainly possible and maybe necessary. So keep that in mind. And I got my MBA in finance from NYU Stern back in 2002. I teach at NYU's Wagner School of Public Service. And before I launched CSBM, I was the CFO of Explore Charter School for 4 years. So I share all this because it'll be relevant throughout the conversation. And I like to start with why. So 1 in 7 charter schools have been shut down. 80% of them are because of financial mismanagement. So that's what actually got me to launch my social enterprise. I wanted to do something about it. And since we've been solving this problem for the past 14 years with what initially it was just me running around New York City trying to help as many schools as possible. Now there's 48 of us on the team that have been working on this. And overall, our purpose is to eradicate financial mismanagement. To us, this is totally a solvable problem, and we've dedicated our careers to it. Again, I share this because then I'm going to be asking you questions for the types of causes. But so you see that there's two brands here. There's Charter School Business Management that focuses exclusively on charter schools and the charter school community. And then there's Foresight Financial Services for Good, which helps nonprofits. And eventually, I think it will also start helping social enterprises once that takes off in a larger way. But you see that in both cases, the vision is identical. It's one day all charter schools / nonprofits will view and value responsible financial management as vital. So why is that our vision? It's our vision because right now people dismiss, especially the educators who launch charter schools or launch nonprofits, they dismiss financial management as a little bit of bookkeeping and a little bit of clerical work. And it's far more complex than that. And our mission on both sides, again, identical, just swapping out the clients, to empower charter schools and nonprofits with the vital knowledge and services to understand and practice responsible financial management.
Hello?
Yes. Question? Okay, I'll keep going. So this is a way that we distinguish ourselves from our competitors. We not only provide the services, and what are those actual services? It's the accounting, the bookkeeping, payroll, financial reporting, forecasting, budgeting, and preparing for your annual financial audit. So we teach our clients how to do this work, as well as we do it for them, or any kind of combination. So I'll pause there for any questions that you may have. Okay, so I see a question.
Yeah.
I see a question here. To sign up for a charter school, do you have to be a 501c3? Yes, you do have to be a 501c3. As an independent school, you can be nonprofit or you can be for-profit as an independent private school. So all charter schools have to be nonprofits. Where the press may get involved with this is they'll say for-profit providers are managing charter schools, and that's why they say that some are for-profit, but they're not technically, they're all nonprofits. Great question. Okay. So legally, we converted from an S corporation to a benefit corporation, and we are also what's considered a certified B corporation. So does anybody know what a certified B Corp actually means?
No. The hell is that?
So a certified B corporation, if you go to the website bcorporation.net, you can learn a ton about this. I think there's more than 3,000 certified B corporations right now. And basically, they use the power of business as a force for good. So right now, what you see in the world is you see, what I call later in the presentation, regular companies who all they're trying to do is make profit for their shareholders. What social enterprises and certified B Corps try to do is not only create value for their shareholders, but they also try to help with their stakeholders. So they want to benefit their employees, they want to help benefit their communities, they want to give back to society. And they're doing that as a for-profit entity, but they're still, so just think of it as like a hybrid between, the social enterprise is a hybrid between a regular company and a nonprofit. You're very mission driven, yet you're able to generate your own revenues. I hope that makes sense. And when I launched this back in 2006, over 14 years ago, I never thought that we'd become 48 teammates and have all sorts of different awards and everything. And a couple of years ago, we were also, as a company, were named Small Business of the Year for New York State. So it's kind of crazy that this all happened. So that's enough background. I'm going to just share an agenda and a lot of things. I'll be posing questions to the audience, and hopefully it'll be a dialogue. So we're going to discuss what's the difference between a regular company, social enterprise, and nonprofit. We're going to get into why should I launch. So if you're interested in launching your own, whether a social enterprise or nonprofit, why, then how to get started, and then what types of challenges will you face. So is there anything else that you'd like on this agenda besides this framework? Okay, I'll take that as no. So if anything else does come up, please ask the question. So I know I talked about it a little bit, but what do you think is the difference between a regular company versus a social enterprise versus a nonprofit? How would you describe this? Brave volunteer.
Well, I would say a regular company, I guess it's kind of like the opposite of a nonprofit. They're looking for like gains and trying to like actually make revenue and profit. Whereas like a nonprofit is like more of geared towards fighting for a cause or just like not overall looking for a profit. I'm not really sure what social enterprise is.
Okay. So think of a social enterprise as a hybrid between the two, between a regular company and a nonprofit. A social enterprise basically is trying to use the power of business as a force for good and still impact society, but not be at the mercy of people donating to a cause in a nonprofit. So there are nonprofits who fully rely on donations from individuals, from corporate foundations, from family foundations, and government grants at the city level, at the state level, at the federal level. So think of it like this. In a nonprofit, typically somebody different from who is receiving the benefit of the service is actually paying for it. So I'll give you one example. If there is a homeless shelter, obviously the homeless cannot pay for that. So there may be a government grant out there that says, okay, this part of Brooklyn, we're going to create a homeless shelter, and New York City's Department of Homeless Services is going to fund this, and now someone has to manage it, comply with all the regulations, but the government in this case is actually funding it. The beneficiaries are homeless individuals who need the help. In a social enterprise like ours, at CSBM and Foresight, we are helping nonprofits, but we ourselves technically are a for-profit organization, but we are benefiting society because charter schools and nonprofits get shut down because of financial mismanagement, and that would be bad for society if these organizations that are trying to do good in society are actually shut down and can no longer provide that public good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay, so what do you think is either wonderful or challenging about each type?
It could be like the amount of time it takes and patience and the support needed by many people.
So for which type of organization is that?
It could work out for all of them, but like
Hmm.
a nonprofit, it could be for like the people who believe in the goals and want to support it. The regular company could be the people that have the skills to make it successful. And social enterprise, it could probably be with like the nonprofit as well.
Yeah, that's right. So what do you think would be challenging about each of the different types?
Um, s- I could say like the workload. I
Workload for sure. Yep. What do you see in the press that's going on right now? There's a lot of cancel culture, right? So if there's a company who supports a particular cause, like did you see what happened with Goya? And again, I want to stay away from politics, but it's the one that first came to mind. There were some people who are for Trump, and some people are anti-Trump, and I try to be respectful of both as possible. I myself am anti-Trump, but anyway, you know, they were essentially advertising Goya beans, and people were saying, "Oh, that's wonderful," and then saying, "No, that's not good." So the press, whatever is happening in the world, it can drastically impact your regular company or your social enterprise or your nonprofit, depending on the sentiment of society, right? People can say, okay, we're going to put this one company out of business because we hate that they're for Trump or we hate that they're anti-Trump. But, you know, the press is definitely part of it. What about in the dynamics in your classrooms? When you're in person, how is it when you do group projects? Do you enjoy it? Do you hate it? How do you feel?
It depends on what the group work is, but I usually enjoy group work.
Okay, is that if you get to choose your partners, um, or what if they just slap together a group? Then you're like, oh great, I got stuck with people who don't do work, and now I'm gonna have to do all of it myself. How do you feel when that happens?
Very stressed out.
Right. So this is no different in either a regular company, a social enterprise, or nonprofit. If you've hired somebody who is a great worker, then you're like, awesome, I love working with this person. And if you hire somebody who's totally incompetent or lazy or super slow or has to be reminded, or you have to repeat and explain things over and over and over, it gets frustrating. But I'll keep it moving. So are you the type of leader with vision and say, I'm very good with vision. I can imagine what I'd like to see in the world, but you know what? I need people to help me implement this vision. And on the flip side, or are you the type of leader who's just like, give me the idea, you have the vision, and I'm actually good at implementing that vision because um, I'm just better at following through on stuff and figuring out step one, step two, step three, this is what needs to happen to implement that vision. Which types of leaders are you? Looks like somebody's writing in the chat. Both, okay, both. We've seen a lot of both. The first one, okay, good at implementing. So Farah, why are you good at implementing? if you're willing to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I said I would be good at implementing because thinking of like the first option, are you the type of leader with a vision? I feel like I never really have like a clear vision in my head, and I'd be better working off of someone else's idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's why
And
I
that,
said that.
and that's perfectly fine. That's great. So what's really interesting is when I was working as the chief financial officer of Explore Charter School, I was helping that school founder implement his vision. And then when I was done with working with him for 4 years, and I told him that, look, I have my own vision that I'd like to launch. I went from being that person who helped him implement his vision to being the guy with the vision myself, and then I needed people to help me implement the vision. So I wanted to bring this up because that's important for you to know yourself. Are you better at the vision but not so great with the follow through? Are you great with the follow through, not so good at the vision? Are you a combination of both? Are you neither? All of those are equally valid, but it's just knowing yourself is really the important part. So based on all of this, which type of organization would you consider launching? Would you just say, you know what, it's too much of a headache to be a social enterprise. I'd rather just do a regular company, or you know what, social enterprise sounds great, or you know, I'd rather just benefit society, let somebody else do the fundraising, and let me just run the nonprofit and do that, you know. And if you'd rather type in, that works too. Let me go back a slide if I can. All right. But which type of organization would you prefer? Regular company and nonprofit. So Rowan, why would you say that?
Because I feel like regular company is more of a common one that we all know, and nonprofit, like I love helping people and like love giving back, and I feel like a nonprofit can help me do that.
Okay, that's great. Anybody else? And I appreciate anybody who's, you know, chiming in, whether texting in or speaking up. So Astrid, social enterprise. Why social enterprise?
Because I think it's important to to like to help other people.
Okay.
But I definitely think that like if you're still at the same time searching for profits, you have like it's easier kind of like to motivate the people, like to have multiple goals, not just a single goal. I think is important.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so when I wanted to initially launch Charter School Business Management, in my fantasy land at age 31, I was like very naive, and I was thinking like, I know how to manage the finances of a school, so therefore foundations and corporations and government will just hand me millions of dollars and I'll go fix all of them, you know? And every foundation and organization that I met with, they all pretty much said, this is never going to work. I wish you luck, but it's never going to work. We did our analysis. And so by default, I kept the nonprofit mindset. We operated as a regular company for several years until I learned about certified B corporations, which was through another class that I actually took at NYU, and I was like, wow, I never even knew this existed. And then I went to that bcorporation.net. I took the assessment, and we scored very high, and all of a sudden we were a certified B Corp. And then last year we switched to a benefit corporation. So, okay, I'm gonna move on. Okay. So start with why. Why would you want to launch your organization, and paired with that, like what problems exist that you'd want to attempt to solve? So what are some of the things that upset you in the world, and you believe that by launching your organization, whether it is a social enterprise or a nonprofit, you can try to solve that? So usually in my class at NYU, I just say, what pisses you off? You know, like what is just like, oh, I hate that this happens. I hate that this exists.
I think a low representation of women is a huge, like globally. So
Okay.
my personal goal is to create an organization which will promote leadership skills at women to not only like rise themselves but also help other women. So that's my initial goal.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully like my own organization will be like, I would be able to command it. I'll be able to lead it and not rely on someone else to lead it for me.
Yep.
So I think that's a own will be better than relying on another organization.
That's great. So what specific services would you provide?
Since I was thinking of making it global, so first find which country needs it the most, and then going there and first of all gaining trust that
Mm-hmm.
this is possible. This is not just a dream that yes, women can do this, that.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely classes, skill classes, job readiness, career, and maybe for speakers for
Mm-hmm.
like women from higher jobs and stuff to encourage younger ones.
Okay. Now, what if you found that, and it's probably true, that all the countries can use this, but you have to only start with one country? Which country would you choose?
From my personal view, I would go to India.
India. Okay. And if you could only start with one service because you couldn't afford to do 20 different services, which would you start with?
I'll go with having speeches to gain the trust of the population, the
Okay.
residents, and then the government. So definitely like launching organization where women speak, not only women but every kind of people.
Okay. That's great. That's great. So the tricky part about all this is think of how noisy the world is, right? You get a million emails, you get a million, all the different Facebook, whatever everyone's on nowadays, Twitter and this, TikTok. There's so many things coming at you that how do you get the attention of people to actually show up? Because it's just so noisy, so we're not going to solve that right now, but I'm just trying to show you that this is so challenging to do, but it's worth it, but it's super challenging. And if you haven't already, after this webinar, please Google Start With Why by Simon Sinek and watch this video on YouTube if you haven't already. And his book is awesome if you want to borrow from the library or read it, but it's basically people, what his view is people buy why you do what you do, not just what you do, not just how you do it, but they really resonate with the why part of it. So, when I talk with school leaders who want to launch their own nonprofit, their own charter school or nonprofit, I tell them that, listen, why I'm doing this, my family lost everything after my father got his second heart attack and had to sell his business for pennies on the dollar. And my why was, I see what drastic effect not being prepared for my father to retire 10 years earlier than anticipated at age 55 instead of age 65, I saw what impact it had on our family. So I became very obsessed with how to manage money responsibly, how to save enough, how to cut costs, and do all those different things. But when I tell them why, then our clients are just like, oh wow, this guy really understands how to do this, and I trust him that he's going to solve this problem. So that's one recommendation. I'm a big fan of also not only figuring out why, but figuring out your purpose. So the way we define, how would you define your purpose? How would you define it? Anyone want to take a shot at purpose? How would you define the word purpose? And don't Google it, just make it up yourself.
So the way that I think of purpose, so like everyone has like a set of goals, whether it's academic or personal, but like your purpose is something that is higher than that transcends like certain categories. So I guess to me, purpose would be like the reason why you wake up to do a certain thing, and something that motivates you for prolonged periods of time, even your entire life. So
yes, yeah. That's excellent, Joel. Thank you so much for chiming in with that, because that's exactly how I like to think about it. It's something that you are ready to do your entire life and work towards it, whether you achieve it or not, right? So as you saw earlier, I said that our purpose as a company is to eradicate financial mismanagement. Now, in my lifetime, are we going to eradicate it? Probably not. Worldwide, with very little education that's provided on proper, responsible financial management, probably not. But myself, the 47 others at my company are all very excited to, one, create the responsible financial management components, and then implement them with as many schools and nonprofits as humanly possible. So it's something that we're going to be working towards, and whatever that is for you. So for Noshin, who was saying that she wants to empower women in India and as well as other countries, that can be her purpose. I want to empower as 1 million women, or whatever number, or I just want to empower women. That's her purpose. So thank you for that definition, Joel. And then what is your vision and mission, right? So think of it like this: like, vision is a future state, something that doesn't exist now, but you want it to be the truth in the future. So, our mission of all charter schools will view and value responsible financial management as vital. Not all view it at all, and not all value it, and they don't even think that it's vital, even though it's blatantly obvious to me. But that's my vision, that all of the schools and all nonprofits will one day respect responsible financial management. Think of mission as, how are you going to get there? How are you going to make that vision come true? So that's why we have our mission as it is, to provide the education and services to understand and practice responsible financial management. So these are all things that you're going to have to figure out for your nonprofit or your social enterprise or even your regular company, vision and mission and purpose. So keep those in mind. Okay, so how do we get started? So I'm a big fan of get work experience in the cause that you believe in. And why do I feel that? So if I just randomly went into the financial management of shoe stores, right? the shoe store owner is going to be like, why should I trust you? Oh, well, I've done this for schools. So, do you know what my business is like? Do you know all the headaches that I go through? Do you know how much inventory I have in the back room and I can't even sell? So if you have that work experience directly for the cause that you believe in, you will get to know not only the problems that you think exist, but also plenty more that actually exist as well, right? So we see it at a high level. Oops, sorry about that. We see it as at a high level, but once you start working in a particular industry, then you get to know it. So for me, when I worked for 4 years at a charter school, that gave me the ability to approach other school founders and existing school leaders to be like, listen, I've done this for 4 years. I know what the problems are. I know how to solve them. So it gives you a leg to stand on, you know. So I'm very big on getting work experience, because you learn the nuances of the problem to a lot bigger degree. So then what I recommend is that you document everything possible into a business plan. So there's plenty of templates available online. You'll create your purpose, your mission, your vision. You'll define the problem. You'll define the solutions, whether it's services or products or both. You'll identify the risks. You'll identify the growth opportunities. You'll identify how to operationalize everything that you're doing. But that's really important in a business plan. And then when you document it all, then start pitching your ideas to your friends and family, and see what they think. So they may be very supportive and say, great job, I think you can totally do this. And at the same time, they may be like the foundations that I spoke with, this will never work. And both of them can be very motivating depending on the type of person that you are, right? So some people say they need the affirmation of others to go forward with something, and some people are like, oh, you told me I can't do it, so I'm going to go do it anyway. You know, does that make sense? Which type of person are you? Are you the type that will only do something if someone will give you enough encouragement, or someone who says that you can never do this and you want to prove them wrong?
I will do is prove them wrong, because when someone say I'm on.
I can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So because when someone says you can't do it, it's more like they're challenging you. So I feel like for me, that's more of a fire that inside me that will want to prove them wrong by establishing something that they thought will not be possible.
Great. Yeah, I'm just like you, Nosheen. When someone tells me I can't do it, I want to go and do it and prove it to them, and be like, yeah, guess what? You know, how about one other person?
I mean, for me, I don't think I would mind if someone said it was a good idea, but I don't think my dreams would be shattered if someone told me it wouldn't work.
Okay.
I'm
Great.
a bit in between.
Yeah, and whichever way you are, it's totally okay. But I just want to make sure that if you really believe in it, you're going to follow through with it. And to me, what they say about entrepreneurs, whether for-profit or non-profit entrepreneurs, there's so many people who will say that they're going to go do something, and then most people don't follow through. A lot of times, what separates an entrepreneur is they get so they're just so curious to find out, and they're okay with, even if the idea fails, at least I tried it, and at least I know that I tried, and I'm going to try something again. So there's something called a serial entrepreneur, who has one failed business and tried to do something else, and has another failed business, and then the third time they got it right. You know, so keep that in mind. The other thing to think about is if you have an idea that you know, you have enough affirmation behind that you have the confidence to go follow through, or you're motivated and by someone who says it's never going to be able to be done, then can you raise the money, right? Because you're going to need the money. So the way we raised the money was we started directly providing services right away. So we started providing services. We charge X amount per hour. And people said, yes, I'm going to sign up for, you know, this service. And then we just started raising money by providing services immediately. You can go to Kickstarter or other different fundraising platforms. You can also raise debt, which means you're going to borrow money from a bank or from family and friends. And if you're really connected, you can raise money via what's called equity, saying, you know, if you've seen Shark Tank on TV, Shark Tank is just like, well, I will give you 50% of my company in exchange for $100,000 because I think the company's worth $200,000 as it is, and you know, and then Mark Cuban or somebody else will say, yes, here's the 100,000, or no way, you're crazy, you know. So that's one way. And then another way to raise money is, if you're going to be a nonprofit, you can first see if people will commit to giving you a donation, because you have to set up a 501c3. And if you start getting those commitments and people are ready to write checks, then you can first work with what's called a fiscal sponsor, who will funnel the money to you. It looks like there's some questions. I have some comments here. Okay, let me just go through. I missed these. If someone tells me work, constructive criticism, are important. Okay. Oh, sorry. I thought it was related to this. So you can, if you have commitments for donations for a nonprofit, then you can funnel them through what's called a fiscal sponsorship. So that an existing nonprofit will say, okay, you know what, the check that you want to cut to the organization, let's use Noshin's idea for example. She calls her organization Women Empowerment, right? Let's write a check to Women Empowerment, and this other nonprofit is willing to accept those checks and do the accounting for me until our 501c3 is approved by the government, because it takes about a year to get the 501c3 approved. So question from Risa, where can you find donors from? City council, write letters. Yes, so donors are typically people who also believe in your cause. If they believe enough, you know, some people may believe in your cause and say, oh, that's nice, but I want to give to a cause that already exists, a cause that has already proven itself. I'm going to give to Goodwill, for example, or I'm going to give to, you know, NYC Cares or any other nonprofit, because I know that they exist. I know they're legitimate. And some people are saying, you know what, I believe in this leader so much that I'm going to actually write a check. So it's usually friends and family first. Then if there's city council, maybe, but that's hard to get those dollars, because there's also equally people who are very fraudulent, you know. So there are people who will raise money and then they run away with it, you know. So how do they know that you're legitimate and you're not just trying to cheat somebody? So you see that there's all sorts of scams online. Click on this link. I'm holding your computer hostage, and all sorts of crazy things that can happen. So you can get donors to write a letter and say, I am going to write a check for $50,000 for this, and then you have to prove that they actually did it afterwards. But it's to show that there's actually people willing to put their dollars. Just like it's just think of it like the presidential campaign, right? Joe Biden is asking for people's money. Before that, Bernie Sanders was asking for people's money, right? They're asking for donations, and if you believe in what they believe in, then you may give to them. I'm going to move on because I want to make sure to leave plenty of time for other questions. Okay, so if there's real money behind your organization to fund it, only then do I recommend that you form legally as what's called an LLC, an S corporation, a C corporation, or a benefit corporation, which are all for-profit entities, or a 501c3, which is a nonprofit. There's other things called like a 501c4, a 501c6, but that's just a little bit too much detail right now. But 501c4 is all about, legally advocating for something. There's different causes within the nonprofit. So doing that, then you have to consider, am I going to be a solo entrepreneur, which sometimes is called a solopreneur, or do you want to build a team? So I'm going to pause there. What's your instinct? You want to be solo, or you want to build a team? You can either write in the chat, or you can
Build a team.
Build a team. And why would you want to build a team?
I feel like I don't have as many skills, or like I don't have a skill that someone would have, and that would better the company or whatever I'm building. So having a team will grow our company even better.
Okay, so what if you don't have money to pay people? Then what would you do?
Could I answer this one?
Yeah, please.
So what I would do is I would find people that are genuinely interested in the cause that I'm supporting, and they would be more likely to help out without pay. And so then I see Mahmoud said hire an intern. I guess they they could also be good, but I would say find people that are very passionate about the same beliefs you have.
Okay. And then Asher made a recommendation around social enterprise. You can give shares. So that's true. You can give shares in the organization, but how are you going to calculate what percentage of the shares in the company you're going to give if you don't know what value they bring? What if they're also don't have experience? Then what are you going to do?
I mean, start low and then give raises.
Yeah, that's possible. It can get complex because afterwards, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but what if they say, okay, you know what? I now have shares in this and I want to quit. I'm going to go create an organization just like this, but I want to do it my way, and I'm going to be the CEO of my own organization. Now, what happens to those shares? Like, how would you handle that?
Well, if you need someone to fill in the position, then it could possibly be transferable to the replacement.
Correct, but what if they say, okay, I own 1,000 shares in this company. You need to pay me, and you don't have the cash to pay them out for what value they created during the time that they were with you.
You have problems.
Yeah, so I'm not trying to deter you. Please don't misinterpret. I want to just show you the other parts to things. So interns, I recognize that the idea is good. Now, what if the intern doesn't know anything, and you are spending so much of your time training the intern, and then 2 weeks later the intern quits? So you know what? This $10 an hour is not going to cut it. I'm going somewhere else for $15 an hour, and now you just wasted 2 weeks training that person, that intern, and now they're gone. How would you handle that?
I'll make them sign a contract beforehand so they can do this.
Employment is at will, so you can fire anybody or they can quit at any given moment. So are you going to go sue that person because they violated the contract, or are you going to spend your time and money not around a lawsuit because you've got other things to get done. How would you handle that?
I would include contract that like they have to notify at least 1 month before, so I have a replacement. I mean, obviously, the things I taught him or her won't be replaced, but at least I have a backup plan.
Okay. Yeah, so again, I'm not trying to deter you. I'm just trying to play out some of the challenging scenarios, which we'll get into a little bit later. I just want to make sure there's no more comments. Okay.
Could you do this thing where like you are like working with another company, and if you like, and by working with that other company, it could encourage some of their workers to leave that company and work for yours based on like how you've interacted with their employees as well. So even, okay, yeah.
So you're saying you want to poach employees of another company. You want to essentially steal them or encourage them to come work for you instead of them? Is that I just want to make sure I get that. Is that right?
Yeah, because yeah, because like what if the company isn't like suitable for them? What if like they have no choice to work in that company and they aren't finding like other companies that meets their standards and yours does?
Yeah, you can do that. Just know that if you do that and then a better company than yours comes around, they may do the same to you, right? So, you know, we call it business karma, right? What goes around comes around. So sometimes, yes, that can work out. And then sometimes it doesn't, right? So I'll give you a real example. Initially, when I launched my company, there was nothing like it around serving charter schools. So a lot of the directors of finance, the chief financial officers, the business managers of those schools said, you know what? It sounds very exciting for me to come join your company because I'd like to help several schools at the same time. That sounds very exciting. Wonderful. So that worked out in the beginning, and then later, people saw us as we're doing so much amazing training of our people. Then the schools started stealing our staff, saying, "Oh, you've developed them. Now I just want to hire them back at the school." You know, so it goes back and forth. And the way we reconciled with that was just like, listen, if you're choosing to leave your school, you want to join us on your own volition, it's not going to burn a bridge, it's not going to make you look bad, it's not going to make us look bad, then it's okay. If you're going to leave anyway and you're quote unquote free agent, then sure, let's do this. But if you're just doing this to try to get a higher salary at your current school and you're using us, manipulating us to negotiate, then that's not cool, you know. So, Nosheen had a question around, wouldn't that also cause issues between the owner of the company and yourself, which may affect one's network and reputation? Absolutely, right? So if, you know, I always wanted to make it on the up and up, and then after someone would leave the school and come to work for us, I would go to that school leader and say, listen, they let me know that they were in the market, they were going to quit anyway, they were not happy. I hope this does not burn a bridge. I hope we can maintain this relationship. 99% of the time they were like, listen, it's understandable. I worked that person to death. They were killing themselves. They were working 16 hours a day. I understand. You're encouraging that they can have a normal work day. No problem. So here's a question. If we're running a debate nonprofit organization, how do you recommend we try to find sponsors? So I'm not so familiar with debate nonprofits. So are there typical vendors and service providers or product providers within the world of debate? You know, that's what I would what I would recommend is to look into people who serve a particular cause. There's always people in that circle. So in the charter, for example, in the charter school world, there are not only service providers, there are schools, there are insurance providers, there are retirement brokers, there are textbooks providers. There's a whole ecosystem around the entire thing. So if it's a debate nonprofit organization, then who serves that ecosystem? And then that's who I would approach. Okay, so am I going to offer a service, a product, or both? I'm going to pause there. What would you like to offer? Both. Okay, so Rowan is saying both. And what industry would you be providing it for? Rowan? Still thinking about it. Okay, that's fine. All right. Where am I going to offer the service or product? Locally, nationally, internationally, online? These are the types of things you need to think about. Local, so initially for us, it was all New York City based. Then we went into New Jersey, then we went to Connecticut, then we got a random client in Chicago, then we got a random client in New Orleans, then we got clients in Las Vegas. So it kind of, the clients called us and we started helping schools outside of New York City alone. The other thing to question is, who actually is my client, right? Am I going to have a wide variety? Is it individuals that I'm selling to? Am I selling to corporations? Am I selling to nonprofits? Am I doing a wide variety, or is it a niche? So another video to Google is look up videos about a book called The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz. He's famous for saying there's riches in the niches. So his view, and he's written a series of really good books, one of which is called Profit First. He talks about how if you have a very odd sickness, are you going to go to your general doctor, or are you going to go to a specialist? And in most cases, you're going to go to a specialist who knows this particular type of problem like no other. So his view is actually to focus on a niche, a very specific thing. So if you think about what we did, charter school business management is a very small niche. We are serving, there's 7,000 charter schools nationwide. That was a very specific niche. But with Foresight, we're helping nonprofits, all different types of nonprofits. Ideally, we find another one that is, another niche. So we're looking at after-school programs, pre-K programs. We're, all different. We're now helping some churches. So we're trying to find another niche to help. But in the meantime, we're helping nonprofits in general. Okay, so what types of challenges will you face? So think about some of the challenges you face personally. So name some of the challenges if you're willing, say some of the challenges you face personally.
So I tutor like these kids online, and I think the most difficult thing is to like spark conversation or to actually give people inspiration, because you can't really like change the way people think, So I think that's like what I'm struggling in that
Yeah, yeah.
class.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a really good one, right? It's not easy. You know, you have to. What if you're an introvert and the world seems to be designed for an extrovert? And there's something called an ambivert, who sometimes you feel like introverted, sometimes you feel like you're an extrovert. But yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges. So the point I'm trying to make is, you know, if you reflect on all the challenges you have personally, they get multiplied in the professional workplace because everybody is bringing their challenges, their personal challenges, to the office, whether nonprofit or for-profit. And now that's going on beneath the surface, you know. So someone could come across as very angry or something, and you're like, geez, what's your problem, you know? But they're still upset that, you know, their parents got divorced, or some random thing happened many years ago, and you know, so the challenges will always continue, you know. So it gets even more so in the professional landscape. So what if you spend all this money, you borrow a bunch of money, and then you launch your product or service? What if no one buys it? How would you respond?
Well, I think you need some level of patience to be like, sometimes you just have to hang tight.
Right. And what if you hang tight and then your rent is due, your car payment is due, you've got to eat, you have to do your laundry, you want to go out on the weekend, you know, there's a lot of different things, and you're running out of money. Then what do you do?
I mean, what if you just start off with like samples at first, and if you like have like a stronger community in like a certain neighborhood or something, and like so like if you start like a company or something and you want to sell a product, you could start off in like a neighborhood where you're familiar with the people, and like and that's why it's like important to have connections as well. So that's where your samples, by having those samples and having those people, like good connection with those people, you can actually start to promote your products, and it would guarantee that most of your products would start selling.
That's great. That's great. So you bring up a really good point, because you're talking about ways to mitigate your risk. So you're not going to invest in creating, you know, 10,000 units of, you know, your product. You want to do a few samples, and then if it takes off, then I'll go produce enough for the demand. So a lot of times people will say that entrepreneurs are risk takers, which they are, but they're also very good at being risk minimizers. So you brought up a really good point about minimizing your risk. Someone brought up marketing online. Yes, you can market online, but how are you going to get people to go to your website? Because everybody's marketing to you. You know, you look up something on Amazon and then you see it all over your feed, you know, on Facebook and Yahoo and all this stuff. So there's so much content coming at you. So it's not the easiest thing. So what if you don't have enough cash and you're running low on cash? What would you do? Are you the type that's going to invest more money and borrow more money, or say, you know what, I'm going to call it quits because I can't take the risk anymore? You know, what if you don't have enough staff? Like, so what if you're in an industry? So this is what happened to us. The service that we provided was so helpful to schools that they kept saying, we need you to, we want you to help launch our second school, our third school, our fourth school. Well, we don't have enough staff. I have to go hire more people, train them, and then we can do this, right? So if you have too much volume, it's a good problem to have, but then that can also, you know, become a problem. Can we have a side income source, or will it be too much to give both enough attention? So yes, that's another good point, is You can start your business as a side hustle. So that's essentially what I did, right? When I spoke with the school founder that I was working with as a CFO, I said, listen, I have this idea. I would be very thankful if you allow me to work 4 days a week at 80% of my salary while I take 1 day a week to try to see if this idea will work. If it works and I can generate, consulting services from potential clients, then I'd like to move to 60% of my salary 3 days a week and then 2 days of my company. And then slowly I phased myself out over an 8-month period until November 1st, 2006 is when I was fully on my own. And then I was like, oh, wow, now I need to make sure that there's enough money coming in, not only for my personal expenses, but for my business expenses, and then have enough money to hire another person. So the question around, will it be too much to give both enough attention? It depends on how much time it's going to take of yours, right? So how much time are you willing to dedicate to each of your two businesses? How much money is it going to take? How, is one stronger than the other? And then you choose, what if quality suffers? Like, so say you made the samples and the samples came out really good, but then you sent it for production and you got 10,000 units and then the quality is terrible. And say, wait a second, the sample I got was so much better. And then clients got upset. How would you handle that?
Well, obviously, wouldn't it be best to obviously you would give them a refund, but then when you reproduce the product, you would I guess add something new to imply that I guess that this product would be much better and more clients would be inclined to buy it if there was an additional I guess something added to it.
That's true, but what if they are no longer want to give you the chance, right? If they are just like, you know what, I gave you the one chance, and now I don't trust you. Now, for example, on Yelp, right? If you go to a restaurant and you read the reviews and it's just like, this restaurant is terrible, they serve me cold food, I told them spicy, it wasn't spicy at all, they spilled the water on my shoulders, all these random things that can happen. Are you going to go to that restaurant?
No, but if I had someone who I really admire or I believe in, so let's say if it's someone popular, right? And if that person gives that restaurant or product a good review, or if that person is involved with that product or business, then I would feel more inclined to give that business a second chance.
That's great. Yeah, if you can earn that second chance, by all means, you can do that. But sometimes nowadays, it's like, cancel culture, it's over, so if you're able to get that second chance, wonderful. But if sometimes it's just one chance and that's it, so word of mouth is really your best friend and your worst enemy at the same time. What if your staff is not getting along? So the folks who wanted to build their own team, what if the staff is not getting along and one person says something upsetting to another, or what if someone said something that's harassing somebody else or bullying somebody else? How would you handle that?
I'll definitely take action to it, because if someone is bullying or harass, it's just against it. For my personal moral, it's not like they don't deserve to be in the team. So I would take action against them, and I will, if it's a normal argument, then I will let them figure it out. Maybe I will make them sit in front of each other and express themselves, so it doesn't go to the next level. But if it's something serious, I will take action and fire them.
Now, what if the person who got harassed or bullied is wants to sue your company. And it's just like, well, wait a second, I already fired the person. Yeah, but that shouldn't have happened. So I want, a settlement for $50,000 and you have $2,000 in the bank. What would you do then?
I'm not sure, but I think I trust the staff enough. Maybe try to gain his or her trust so he believes in me, and maybe raise the salary or make some, like, try to convince them.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things. You can have insurance plans, but those are expensive, so there's all different types of things that I'm trying to play out these scenarios because, again, not to deter you, but to show the different types of things that I've seen over 14 years, good and bad, that end up happening. What if there's bad press about your organization or you get sued? So we just talked about a lawsuit, but what if there's bad press and the New York Post or the Daily News or the New York Times writes a horrible article about your nonprofit saying that the leader of the nonprofit is awful. They're not doing what they said they're going to do. You should not donate to this nonprofit. How would you handle that?
I think, as someone said before, someone popular. So I mainly focus on creating networks. So I will use that network to gain their trust back. Maybe have someone popular or have someone who have the authority and people trust them. So definitely.
What if you don't have access to popular people? They're just like, who are you? I don't know you. I know I'm this famous person, but they're not gonna respond to your tweet or something. What if you don't have access to them?
Well, don't these kind of things like usually pass? Like, I've known like organizations that like get hated on or like get sued for like something really big, but then people eventually forget it. So especially when like another organization is in a scandal as well.
It's possible. It's totally possible, or it could crush the organization, right? So it could pass, or it could not, and dismantle the organization. So it's something else. So what if you get audited by the IRS or the Workers' Compensation Board or the Department of Labor? So what if that happens? You get audited by some of these different organizations. That's just something else to consider. And then what if I don't understand the components of responsible financial management? How would you learn all of that? Would you take courses in college and learn on your own online? Like how would you learn about those things?
Online. But personally, since my brother is taking classes in business, so I'll ask for his advice. So that's for my case. So reach out to the ones that I believe that they can teach me way faster and cheaper than classes, and rather than investing in those.
Okay. Oops. What if there's a pandemic in the world that either crushes or negatively impacts your organization? How would you respond to that?
I mean, like most cases, a lot of them like Uber is like, well, it really depends. Like Uber, despite the fact of the coronavirus, like now Uber's doing this thing where they would like, I guess, deliver your products or stuff like that. So I don't really know. And like some organizations are like able to move online as well because you don't really have to like go to that like their like stores or whatever to personally like buy their products as well too.
Sure. Yeah.
And like another thing you can do is that like you can actually show your involvement and like your sincerity towards the people who are suffering from that pandemic. So afterwards, like people would actually view you in a positive light, and you might even get more customers as well.
That's right. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things you can do. So much of it depends on the amount of trust that you built in your communities. Whether you have enough dollars to go around to manage really well, whether you can avoid all these different risks and challenges that you may face. But yeah, I hope what I've shared has, been eye-opening. And, if you have additional questions at this point, I'm happy to answer them. And whether that's stuff that I didn't cover or stuff that I did cover that you wanted to have more, you wanted to dig into a little bit deeper.
This is just a random question, but so can you switch back to a nonprofit company, or was it regular one if you want to, if one fails?
So what do you mean if one fails? Could you share a little bit more?
For example, if I start with regular company, but then I decide like my goal is more fitted for social enterprise or nonprofit, will there be will the transition be too much, or will it be affordable?
It just depends on what's involved in that transition, right? So, for example, for us, we went from a regular company that was very mission driven, but we didn't know about becoming a certified B Corp. We spent a lot of time in the assessment answering the questions. It was like hundreds of questions that we had to answer about how we operate. So it cost us in terms of, the dollar value of the time that we spent towards it. And then there's a fee to become certified each year. It's an annual fee, which depends on the size of your organization. So for that, it was affordable. We chose to use some of our profits towards that. But if we change from a social enterprise to a nonprofit, there would be a lot of legal issues that would come up, because we developed all of this, what's called intellectual property, saying this is the know-how of how we do things. And now we went from, owning that personally versus now the nonprofit owns it, and now it's just out there for anybody to use. So that cost could be very high, or the nonprofit could buy that intellectual property from that regular company, or vice versa. So there's a lot of legal issues that come into play, but that's what comes to mind. But thanks for asking the question. What other questions that you have?
So my question sort of revolves around, I guess, regular companies, because
Yep.
What I was thinking about before about like keeping your workers sort of loyal to you. What I guess companies that are really big or have the resources to do is that they offer education assistance for student employees and stuff. So for me, I think it's like a double-edged sword, because of course, on the one hand, you have tremendous costs, but then it might just promote loyalty among your the people you employ, and it could also like help benefit their performance in the company. So I was just wondering what your thoughts on were.
Yeah, so if you're like a Google, right, who has infinite money because they found a way to make so much, then absolutely. But for an organization my size, we have to be smart about how do we spend our money, and is it best to do it as educational assistance? Is it best to do it as bonuses, because people would just rather use the money? Is it fair that 5 of the 48 members took advantage of the educational assistance, but everybody else already had their degrees, so they didn't want it and they didn't have access to it, and then now they're complaining because how come these 5 people got it but I didn't? You know, so there's a lot of thought that has to be put into the fairness of certain decisions around whether to do it, when you have to be mindful of how much budget you actually have available. I think your generation is seeing these super large organizations where, you know, Apple and Google and Facebook and you know, Netflix, just making billions and billions of dollars, and the vast majority, these are the statistics, only 4% of small businesses break $1 million in revenue, and only 0.4% of businesses break $10 million in revenues. And there's 30 million small businesses in the US, of which I think it's 24 million don't even have a single employee. So these are types of things to keep in mind, because you see a lot of restaurants, they've gone out of business, right? A lot of the mom and pop restaurants, they're out. They couldn't afford it. They can't pay the rent. They can't pay their employees. Some were able to. Some were delivering lots of food to people's apartments, so that's great. But some just said, okay, belly up. I have to declare bankruptcy. And some, like the big franchises, were able to survive. Here's some other questions that came in. Did you change from a 501c3 to a social enterprise? No. So to clarify, my organization is not a charter school. It serves charter schools. You know, so it just depends, you know. And then another question is, are nonprofits ever bought off by larger corporations or nonprofits? So they're not usually purchased, they usually get merged. So there's a lot of nonprofits, when they have difficulty surviving on their own, they may say, listen, I'd like to merge with a larger nonprofit. We have wonderful staff. Here's a nonprofit that's very similar to what we're doing. If you're able to continue providing the same service, wonderful. If not, the staff that I have are awesome. Please hire them, you know, and let's merge in whatever money we have left over into your nonprofit. So that can happen. For a large corporation to buy a nonprofit is not really the norm. There are organizations like Grayston Bakery that have some entities that are nonprofit, some entities that are for-profit, and it's like a meld of the two worlds. So, for example, the chocolate that's in the brownies for that particular ice cream with Ben and Jerry's is a for-profit organization, and I think they have in Grayston Bakery, they hire people right off the street with no experience, but that's a nonprofit organization. So there's different ways to meld the two. There's a lot of different combinations. Okay, so Risa wants to start tutoring after school program. Okay. There was just one last question. It was a tutoring after school program. Would you recommend a for-profit or nonprofit? That's a tough question. I would recommend you reach out to other after school programs and see what they did before you start inventing it yourself.
Okay. Thank you so much for that incredible presentation, Professor Thakkar. It was really engaging, and we all really loved hearing from you. If members have any other questions, you can either email Professor Thakkar with the email on the screen, or email your question to one of the board members and we'll forward it to him. Thank you everyone so much for coming, and remember to look out for signups for Summer Economic Forum on July 30th, which is coming up. Thanks again, Professor Thakkar, and yeah, everyone have a great day.